All right. So we are here with Chip McGee, uh, and we are going to be talking about mortgages today. So brought in the big guns, and because I'm not a specialist in that, but I bring him in, and he knocks out all that, and it's makes my life a whole lot easier. So if you'd like to start it off on maybe a little more about you as a background, and we'll just jump right in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm Chip McGee. I work with Rosegate Mortgage. We're based out of Charlotte here. It's a mom and pop shop. Uh, Father and son actually own it. It's a small business, and we just wanted to get into the lending game mostly because we started to see that there are lenders out there that just weren't being upfront with what their fees were. They weren't being open to tell someone what their rate could be before they ever actually applied. And this was especially during the refi boom of 2020 and 2021. And then as we got more into the purchase game, it just really shows the difference in honesty and integrity in the way that lending is done. It's a little bit more of a tech side of the company, but we just love being open, honest. That's kind of the idea. I'll lose deals often because I just am willing to tell someone that there's a better deal somewhere else. I was an English teacher before, so I'm more than willing to just kind of not worry about it and tell someone if there's something else better out there.
Right. Well, the thing that I liked about your company that I've seen so far is uh, you get a lot of options. It's not just, hey, this is the going rate. It's here. I mean, sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
You can get like 20 or 30 different options, and they have different rates with buy downs and points. So
Mm-hmm.
maybe can we go into a little bit of that, explaining how that works and what maybe differentiates you guys than other companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So the most important thing to do when you really apply for a mortgage is to ask someone not just what their par rate is that day, because as soon as you ask them what the par rate is, that number is going to change in 3 hours.
Right.
So it really isn't necessarily about getting a rate on a front end because there's so many different options. Really, what you want to do is establish a couple different ideas. So if you're someone that wants to spend less money on the front end when you close on your house. If you need cash to maybe do some quick renovations to the house and you don't mind maybe having a higher monthly payment at first, knowing that you'll refinance in a year or two, it's a really wise idea to actually take a credit and to ask the lender, like, are you actually offering credits right now if I take a higher rate? They'll say yes, and you can kind of find a way to get that.
Mm.
You get an option for that. Ask them how much a buy down would be. I know right now there's a big deal with people using seller credits for temporary buy downs. Those are a great option as well. But asking your lender just what does it take to get the rate that they're quoting you? Because a lot of times you'll just ask a lender, what's the lowest rate you can give me? And they'll tell you a rate, 5.1, 5.2, whatever it is, but it costs money to get there. If somebody is losing money to get a 5.2, it's either them or it's you. And you'll see if you look at a loan estimate when you ask them for an official loan estimate. And I always say ask for that rather than a worksheet. Because
Right.
a worksheet, they can do whatever they want. They're not bound by anything that they put on a worksheet. But if you ask for a loan estimate specific for a property, when they send that to you, check in box A, it's on the second page, and there will be something called origination charges or discount points. And you'll get to see how much it's costing you to get the rate that they're quoting you. And it's always the best question to ask is just, yeah, I want this great rate, but how are we getting there? And
Nothing's ever free in this world.
Never, never. And it's always great to have, I'm a lender and I still will tell people, go out and get another quote, please. Like make me do what I can to win this deal because, and I normally like to go low anyway, but forcing someone to go and get you a better deal, it's always better to shop somebody because it's always in the best interest of the buyer of the house.
Right.
But more options, the better. Always. You want to see different ways to make things happen. And you always want to focus not necessarily just on the interest rate, but what the total monthly payment is going to be. Because there's a lot that goes into that. It's not just what your rate and your principal is. Some companies will charge $150 to $200 a month in private mortgage insurance.
Yeah.
Some lenders, I know we at Rosegate, we pride ourselves on having the lowest in the business. our average is somewhere around $30 to $50 a month. So, just because you can potentially have a lower monthly payment taking a higher rate, just because that mortgage insurance is lower, which means that more money goes towards principal each month on the loan as well, which is really what we want when we're buying a house.
So maybe go a little bit step further. What is PMI insurance?
PMI it's mortgage insurance. So it's actually insurance for the lender. So it is the lender saying, we are not sure that you will actually pay off this mortgage. And because of that, we need you to pay us in case you were to go delinquent on your payments. It really is, it's sort of just a way to ensure that they are going to get something out of this in case they have to short sell or foreclose on the property. It goes off at 20%, automatically at 22, but if you ask for it at 20, it comes off, or if you were to put 20% down on a home.
Right.
I know that credit unions will also, they'll have no PMI if you put 10% down.
Oh, nice.
And there are benefits for going with a credit union. There are benefits for going with a correspondent lender. Everyone has their different thing that they do best.
Right.
It just really comes down to what your goals are for purchasing.
Right. Well, maybe backtracking a little bit. So you talked about maybe it makes more sense to buy points versus not. So now with interest rates being maybe a little bit higher, but they're coming down. Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball, but maybe not everybody's scenario is the same. But what is your take on right now, maybe potentially buying points versus maybe not holding off and not buying any points with hoping that the rates go down over the next maybe 6 months to a year and maybe get the maybe refinance later? So
Yeah.
what's your take on that? Because that's the $1 million question right now.
Absolutely, and I wish I had a crystal ball. That'd be great. I wish I could tell you.
You'd make a lot of money if you did.
Very good at what I did.
Yeah.
I always suggest that if you're comfortable with the monthly payment, go with what you're comfortable with. And if I typically don't try to suggest discount points unless we're talking with an investor, or unless the seller is paying for them with seller credits. Because if it's a seller that is paying for you to have a lower monthly payment, there's no loss in that. If you refinance in 8 months, there's no loss. You just realized the gain in a shorter amount of time.
Right.
But what you're going to want to do is look at the break-even point. So with buying down points, all that it technically is prepaid interest. So it's almost like taking that money, putting it in a separate escrow account that makes a monthly payment on these for a certain amount of time. The break-even point that I typically suggest somebody looking at, if it's 20 to 25 months before it makes more sense to buy the rate down. So if it's an $8,000 discount point to buy your rate down, and after 2 years, you get that $8,000 back in saved money from monthly payments, it's a good idea.
Right.
If it's more than 2 years, I don't necessarily always suggest it or think it's that wise, because you're most likely going to have refinanced by then.
Or so.
We're looking at, most people are in a mortgage for, most people are in a home for what, 5 to 7 years or so, 3 to 7 now.
I mean, back in the day, it was your whole life.
Right.
But now it's getting shorter and shorter.
Right.
I think we're definitely less than 10 years, and I think we're probably closer to 5 by now. So you're probably spot on.
And if you're in a home for that, most people typically will refinance every 3 to 5, because there's going to be a better rate, unless, if you have a rate in the 2s,
it's going to be hard to beat.
It's going to really be hard to ever get back to that. But if we have a situation where you are at like a 5.6, 5.8, we'll probably see something in the 4s in the next 3 years or so.
Right.
And so it might not make the most sense to buy that discount point right now. But if a house has been sitting on the market, if you like it, that's the house that you want, there's no point in not asking for that seller credit. Maybe if they drop the price $10,000 is one of my favorite deals. You find a house that's dropped $10,000. You go in and you go ahead and give them list, but then you ask for that $10,000 in seller credits back.
Right.
The listing agent probably going to like the fact that something's coming in at list price. The people were already willing to lose that $10,000 that are selling the home.
Right.
and you get to use that $10,000 to lower your monthly payment, because $10,000 of principal doesn't do nearly as much as $10,000 of prepaid interest.
Right.
And that's where we really can get into the math of figuring out what makes the most sense.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that $10,000 really does not make a huge difference when it comes to the mortgage. Like what do they say? For every $10,000, it'll drop your
About $60.
exactly. So yeah,
$60 a month for 10,000, and realistically, that's even your cash to close can actually be lower if you ask for it in credits. So if you can ask for $10,000 in credits, get that lower monthly payment, and really only bring maybe $1,000 more to the table, and we've taken care of maybe some closing costs, because you don't have to use all the credit towards your buy down. You
Right.
can just use some. And then we're really talking about ways to get creative. There's so many ways to use seller credits on the mortgage side of things, to where it's actually a benefit to do that versus offering less on a home.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good knowledge drop.
Yeah, I mean, I love getting into the weeds with that as well. So
yeah. Well, what else you got for us? I know we had some questions on social media. I could probably take a look here, but
sure, I'm happy to answer them.
Let's see here if I can work this thing. So with prices being a little bit more negotiable right now, things are sitting on market a little bit more. Forgot where I was going to go with this. Sorry, my dog just distracted me for half a second. I mean, one of the better things about this market is when things are not moving as quickly, it's nice to negotiate. And we kind of just got out of that, where it's nice to use some negotiation points towards lender costs and buying down those rates. What are you seeing with, because obviously you see probably what the asking price is versus what they're under contract for. What are you seeing the difference right now? Because I mean, I can only see what I'm doing, and I'm working my tail off to try to get properties for as good as possible when I'm on the buying side. But when I'm on the list side, I'm trying to make sure we maximize as much as we can. And that's going into a bunch of different factors. But what are you seeing on a bigger scale of what their ask price is, how many days on market versus where they're ending up actually under contract?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about Charlotte specifically, and really the Carolinas, is that it's all pockets, right? Like it's not, you can't paint with a broad brush everything that's going on in a market. Like in Ballantyne or in South Charlotte, houses are still going with, I think I heard a story the other day of a house going with $80,000 in due diligence, and it was a $800,000 house. And that's 10% just in due diligence. And that's money that somebody is willing to lose if one thing is wrong. Too bad for them, right?
They must have a good feeling about it.
Right. And that terrifies me on one hand, but also that means that they really want the house. And so there are still strong offers out there. There are still houses that are having highest and best offers being out there. And then on the other hand, there are houses that can sit on the market for 60, 80, 100 days, just because it's possible for somebody to have an emotional comp. Somebody's in a neighborhood and they say, oh, well, that house down the street looks kind of like ours, and it's sold for $800,000, and our house is pretty much the same thing. But they haven't done anything on the inside. Yeah. There's no updates, and those are the houses that'll sit longer. If it's accurately priced, it'll get people coming in.
Right.
Because there's no way to stop the influx of people that have been moving to Charlotte. There's just no way to stop it at this point. They're going to be here. I think it's 85 people a day.
Yeah.
On average.
Is that right? I know a couple of years ago it was up to like 100, and that was crazy. So it's nice to hear that it's still a huge influx, which I get plenty of out-of-state buyers coming in. That it's crazy though.
Yeah, and
Charlotte's
with that, that means that if a house is correctly priced, there's going to be a lot of offers, and there's not going to be that wiggle room. It is going to be where the best decision realistically is come in and take a par rate. Be comfortable with what the monthly payment is. Just be inside of a comfort zone. Rather than ever saying what's the max that we can do, ask yourself, like, what do I want my life to look like outside of my mortgage
Lifestyle.
Yeah, like
That's what I said.
like,
Lifestyle.
What do I
What
want
kind of
to be
lifestyle are
able
you
to
looking
do?
for? Yeah.
And then work backwards from that, because then the mortgage becomes a pie piece of a bigger pie rather than half of it.
Right.
And then you're struggling to make something work. And then if a house has been sitting and you're willing to do some stuff to it, that's where you can be creative. Come in and you find a house that maybe it needs just like a couple walls taken out. Maybe it needs just a revamped kitchen. And the seller knows that. The seller should know, or the listing agent should know what really could be done to this house to make it better. And then if you make an informed offer on the home that says, hey, we want to do these things to it. This house needs this done. We know that these are the comps in the area that are actually correct for this. If you offer that, or even if you say, listen, say it's a $450,000 house. They had listed originally at 500. They've dropped it down a couple times. If you come in, you say, this house probably needs $20,000 worth of work. If you offer 460 for that, and then they haven't gotten any traction at 450 maybe, you offer 460 with 20,000 in credits, and you put a sizable amount down or whatever, that buyer is going to be more inclined, or the seller is going to be more inclined to accept that sort of an offer.
$20,000 in celebrate.
I've seen 20. I've seen more, but I've seen 20 because there's
is it a percentage?
There's a percentage rule, so you can get up to 9% if you put 25% down. So it's three. The easy way to remember it, I remember this. Little John and the East Side Boys. But if you put 5% down, you can get 3% in seller concessions.
All right.
If you put 20% down, you can get 6% in seller concessions. If you put 25% down, 9% in seller concessions.
And that's only for a primary.
That's for a primary home, and that is on, and that's with a Fannie or Freddie conventional loan.
Right. What about for the investors out there? Is there a certain percentage for non-primary loans?
Yeah, I believe. Gosh, it's escaped my mind. I think it's 2%.
I really put you on the spot on that.
It's 2%.
I think you're right.
It's because I remember now.
I've gotten a little bit over. This was probably a few years ago when I bought one of my investment properties. I went over that 2%, and I had to move the numbers just to make it work, so I wasn't losing like $600 or something like that. But yeah,
and that is
it is lower. It is lower.
That is one of the tricks of it, is that, for VA, for example, because you can't get that money back at closing. It can't just be cash. But with VA, it can. So one of the interesting things about a VA loan, since it's 0% down, for a down payment, once the closing costs are taken care of, anything that they offered in due diligence or earnest money can actually be written as a check back to the veteran once all their selling costs or closing costs have been taken care of. So if they really want a home and they have money in the bank, they don't want to put any down though, you can offer $50,000 in due diligence, take care of the closing costs. Maybe the seller even took care of the closing costs. They get a check for $50,000 back, and they bought a house for nothing out of their own pocket. And then they're able to just use that money to help pay down the mortgage over time. And they'll always get a better rate at the same time. So
yeah, they do.
It's a beautiful thing. Government really, really wants veterans to be in homes. So.
Yes, they do. They do a good job too, because it's a few extra hoops that we have to go through, like radon or termite inspections, which you can elect not to, but I always tell people they should. But they make you, and it's a nice factor that they're putting veterans into safe homes.
Absolutely. And I think one of the smart things that we get to see with VAs or FHAs, really educating listing agents on this sometimes when there's an offer put in, because I know that oftentimes we'll see no FHA or no VA when a home is being sold. And really it just comes down to asking the question, what sort of condition the house is in. As long as the house doesn't have peeling paint, as long as the sidewalk isn't cracked, as long as there's railings on anything over 36 inches,
Right.
we really won't have a problem. And if it's connected to city water, if that's available. Just little things that really aren't that much of a deal breaker. It really just boils down to whether or not the listing agent or even the sellers are aware that these are good programs that are really meant to help people. I know, for example, duplexes. I know, and you're more on the investing side, but a duplex, you should almost always be buying with an FHA if you're a first time buyer, because you can put 3.5% down on a duplex. And
Right.
you can't do that with a primary loan. You have to put 15% down if it's a 2 to 4 unit home.
Really?
And so that difference in being able to get into investing through real estate, putting only 3.5% down on a home, and you'll get somebody helping to pay your mortgage, that's just an incredible benefit.
Right. Right. Oh man. Sorry, my dog again is getting into the garbage. So, what else you got for us?
Well,
I know we kind of went in a lot of different directions, but with the current market where we are, what are you seeing just as like a kind of a general update?
yeah. So one thing to always keep in mind of is that whenever the Fed announces something, whatever the Fed announces is not the rate that you will be looking at, because that they come out on a monthly basis, and their interest rates are actually just the cost of other banks being able to borrow money against the Fed. So whenever you read something, be it on Forbes or whatever thing you read on Twitter, whatever it is, that's not actually a true predictor of where rates are going. The better thing to look at is something called the 10-year T-note. So it's a treasury yield.
Right.
And if you were to pull that up on Google and just take a look at that, that will actually tell you where the rates are going to be going every day. And there's about a 2-hour lag that ends up happening. And what's wise in my opinion on it is that interest rates change about 4 times a day. You'll get your initial rate at about 10 o'clock in the morning. There'll be a reprice at 11, one around 2 or 3, and then maybe one at the end of the day.
Right.
And if you can keep an eye on that, I'm not a big fan of timing the market personally. I love that it exists for out there. I'll use it every now and then, but the best time to lock a rate is the moment that you get under contract.
Right.
Because if you're comfortable with what the monthly payment was when you went under contract, you've already won. There will be a better rate down the road. And whether or not it drops down a little bit, we were already comfortable. There will be a better rate in 2 years within the next amount of time. And we'll talk about it when that comes up. Because really, I want somebody to have the lowest monthly payment possible every time. This is my belief. I'm not, it doesn't affect me. I just want somebody to be in the best financial situation possible. Right. And I'm just a little bit more conservative of a person when it comes to locking. And so I just think, go ahead and lock it now. We're good where it's at.
It's really rare to like maybe new constructions, one of the scenarios where you literally can't lock a rate because it's so far out. It's 160 days or 180 days out. Like you cannot. I guess you can pay for extended rate lock, but it comes at a price as well.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, over time, it is good to lock during that point. But sometimes in new construction, you just can't. So you got to kind of try to time it a little bit.
Right. And that's on a macro level. I think what I've seen from the information that I've been getting is that it seems like we are it's volatile inside of a more stable time. So where the rates were in September through November and December, like where they were just crazy.
And were they like 7.5 or something?
We were quoting in the high 7s, mid to high 7s. Wow. And now we're back into the 6s. Some are even in the 5s, especially if you can get seller credits. But that volatility has come back to where, you really don't see them jump more than a little bit each day or come down just a little bit. So it's not like there's going to be a situation where you lock and then the next day, all of a sudden, the rates are going to drop a whole point.
Right.
We've seen longer trends. And then inside of that, with the Fed looking to pull back, as long as information is what we're told that it's going to be. So if inflation comes in at the numbers that they expect it to be at, typically rates are going to be good. They're going to actually go down most likely, because if you see the rates as like a being with emotion, as long as things are expected, rates are going to be low and be good. If something comes in that they are not expecting, that's bad news, rates are going to jump up. Or if there's bad sentiment on something, rates are going to jump up. But as long as in the macro sense, the Fed continues to pull back on their interest rate hikes, if they continue to do 25 bips over the next 2 months or so, and then maybe they even start cutting rates, and by the summer, fall, we'll start to see rates really start to drop again. And then it'll be, if you bought a house in February, around November, it's a great time to refinance that home, or in December, because you'll be able to see a rate that is potentially a point less. And that's when it really starts making sense to refinance that mortgage. And
20, 25 months you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then you're really winning.
Yeah.
So it's always just good to keep an eye on those things, to be informed. And I'd say the most important thing that most important trait you can have as a buyer when you're speaking with a mortgage lender is just to ask them questions behind whatever they initially show you. So be willing. You're not bothering them. If you're dealing with me, you're never bothering me by asking me a question about what I've shown you, because it is legitimately what I get paid to do, to explain to someone what is going on financially.
Right.
And I see my position less as a lender and more as a consultant, where I'm talking someone through what the options are that they have in front of them. And by not overloading someone with 20 different, which I could show the price at every single rate that exists out there, but giving them a couple things and saying, hey, you can go this route, and then kind of getting that feedback, being willing to ask questions, and not just accept what a lender has told you.
Right.
Always push back, always ask that question, and then beyond that, take that loan estimate and go to another person and ask them to look at it. I always, because I tell people, please shop me, please look at other lenders. If they come to me and I ask them, hey, get a loan estimate from the other lender and bring it over to me, and I'll walk you through what they've done. And we'll look at theirs and mine side by side. We'll see where they're the same and where they're different. Because there are lenders out there that'll they'll tell you they can get you a rate and then it charges you $14,000. Or there are lenders that will not correctly, because it's a worksheet rather than a loan estimate, they won't set up an escrow account. And so then the cash to close will look like it's about $4,000 or $5,000 less, just because they didn't put in their taxes and insurance. And so you got to be willing to ask those questions. They're like, hey, I see that this is empty. Why is this number empty? Why is this blank?
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And just ask questions. And then the three things that always matter, in my opinion, with a mortgage are what your monthly payment is, what your cash to close is. And then I'd like to say on the loan estimate, the third most important thing is the address. It's actually the most important, but did you get the house?
Yes.
Because it doesn't matter. You could have a great rate, but if you didn't get the house, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You could have a 3.5, but if there's no address on the top of that loan estimate, is this lender helping you get homes? Are they helping you craft offers and saying like, hey, what if you do this? Like working hand in hand with your real estate agent to say, we can do this to help get this home. We're willing to, we can back up and say, we're backing up the Brinks truck with due diligence, right? We have the ability to do that. And then we can play with that money later. Are they helping? Are they making a call to the listing agent after the offer gets put in so that they can let them know that you're not just pre-approved, but that they've got everything in front of them and that they're more than comfortably going to be able to do this. While not overplaying your hand, obviously, but also letting them know that you're confident and that they've already been put through at least some sort of underwriting.
Yeah, I mean, you want a go getter when it comes to anybody that's on your team. And it's nice to have a lender that will make that phone call.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Cool. Well, let's cap this off. What do you got? You want to close it out?
Sure thing. Use Stephen Custer, the XP Realty, for all of the homes that you're looking for. And then give me a call, 704-975-9227. I'm Chip McGee. That is actually my real name. My sisters named me after the Chip Cup and Beauty and the Beast. So I know that it sounds ridiculous, but it is actually my name. And I guess today it's Valentine's Day, so happy Valentine's Day.
Very good. Well, we're going to have Chip back on here for at least monthly updates, but as different things or big changes in the market, in the mortgage world, we'll have him on and we'll just keep you guys updated as we're doing this. So thanks for watching, and until next time.
Thank you.